Palantir. So Palantir is a company. What we do, we're a product company. We have built software that allows our customers to understand their own data. So oftentimes people store their data in many different places, and it's very hard to get at and understand in a cohesive way. And our software allows them to search and explore their data from a single platform without, needing to understand how to query a database or any sort of advanced analytic skills. So that's like very quick elevator pitch. And in terms of what I do, I work on the government side. We work across many different industries. So I particularly work in government. We have work in healthcare and the financial sector, among others. Very excited to have you all here. I also do a lot of work at Palantir with our sort of diversity working group. And one of the things that we feel very strongly about is kind of learning about the things that we don't know, and providing the opportunity to, providing opportunities to come to events like this, where we can learn about things that we might not deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I'm very excited, happy you're all here, and very excited to see and hear from all the panelists.
So, why Africa 2050? To support this, I reached out to a quote from Peter Thiel, who's one of the co-founders of Palantir, and I found this in his book, 0 to 1. He said, a new company's most important strength is new thinking. And Nana, Erikan, and Alexandra and I, we really created this event with the thought of how can we spur and yield innovation and collaboration through connecting people to something through information and yielding more knowledge so that we can have a different pathway. And we hope to, based off the success of this event, continue to do a series. And so anybody, please reach out if you're interested in participating further in any of our next events. Before I turn the event over, I wanted to just set the tone further for innovation and have you guys follow me on a quote from the Dancing Woolly Masters. Potentia was introduced by Aristotle as something standing in the middle between the idea of an event and the actual event, a strange kind of physical reality. Just in the middle between possibility and reality is potentia. And that's, to me, describes innovation. Without further ado, Nina.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. It's beyond to see everyone here. This is our first Africa 2050, and as Tiffany mentioned, we might be doing more, so it's really exciting. We worked so hard to bring together this community. We're specifically targeting innovators, investors, and info seekers interested in sharing insights and learning more about the goings-on in Africa's emerging tech space. And one of the three profiles that we targeted, I think I fall into the info seeker category. Although my day job in digital marketing has exposed me to basic advances in digital media technology, I'm far from a, quote, techie. But of course, technology is the reason I'm here today. 4 months ago, Tiffany of ISPOSSIBLE, we just met, approached me via LinkedIn with her brilliant idea to start a purposeful conversation about tech in Africa. And it reminded me that in November 2013, a gentleman by the name of Brian Long Aoya, he is a venture capitalist at KEC Ventures, and he also reached out to me via LinkedIn, urging me to consider just sort of covering more of what was happening in tech in Africa. Now, of course, I had been sort of cursorily following the industry via friends and articles and Facebook status updates. A few years ago, a friend who is a New York-based Nigerian, her name is Ngozi Odita, she co-founded Social Media Week Lagos, which every year brings together entrepreneurs and experts in African tech. And I remember beaming with pride when I learned that Nigerian Chinedu Echeruo who is the founder of online city transit guide Hopstop, that he had sold it to Apple in 2013 for a rumored $1 billion. In tandem, it was exciting to see sort of media platforms like OkayAfrica, Bella Naija, Africa as a Country, and This is Africa grow into these influential sources of information about the latest music, art, fashion, and technology coming out of the continent. It was also incredible to see the vibrant dialogue and movements that were happening around political issues, sparked by mere hashtags. Most of us watched as North Africans used social media to connect and organize the wave of demonstrations that became known as the Arab Spring, which ultimately resulted in the ousting of the leaders of Tunisia, Egypt, Libya, and Yemen. And then there was Bring Back Our Girls, the hashtag heard around the world. That single hashtag raised awareness around the world about the increasing terrorist presence in the region and may have influenced Nigeria's subsequent presidential election results. I learned of scores more innovators on the continent using technology to solve stubborn problems. Game changers like Jamila Abbas, Susan Okuya, and Linda Kwamboka, who created the mobile app M-Farm to help farmers in Kenya optimize their earning capacity. And Kayode Disu. He is the founder of ISEC, the Nigerian startup that has developed secure authentication technology for the Nigerian finance industry. And then there are tech incubators like the Meltwater Entrepreneurial School of Technology, which is based in Accra, Ghana, and has been training and funding the next generation of tech entrepreneurs in Africa since 2008. Needless to say, technology, specifically increasingly low-cost access to the internet, social media, smartphones, and the community that's stoking this technological innovation is radically changing not only the narrative of Africa as a dark continent only burdened by poverty, war, disease, and corruption, but it's affecting political and social change too. So I want to share a couple of stats with you that I found interesting and amazing and exciting. According to internetworldstats.com, as of December 2014, roughly 10.3% of the world's internet users are in Africa. And just to give you some sort of perspective, 10.1% are in North America. Though 64% of Americans use the internet, with Africa boasting the second largest population in the world, the numbers shake out to roughly 268 million internet users, with more than 50% of Kenya's, Egypt's, and Seychelles' populations online. Tunisia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe are close behind with over 45% of their residents accessing the internet. These numbers and percentages will likely grow as Africa's population, currently 1 billion people, doubles to 2 billion by 2050, with 1 billion Africans projected to be under 35 years old by that time. Of these current 268 million African internet users, almost 52 million are on Facebook. Tunisia has one of the highest percentages of Facebook users. In Tunisia, 31% of their 11 million residents are on Facebook. And in terms of sheer numbers, the most Africans using Facebook are in Egypt, Nigeria, South Africa, and Morocco. Now, while smartphone usage is less common than cell phone usage on the continent right now, 34% of South Africans and 27% of Nigerians have smartphones. A 2014 report by Group Special Mobile Association predicts that more than 500 million Africans will be using smartphones in the year 2020, which undoubtedly means more Facebook use and more consumption of content on their phones, something that telecoms like MTN are getting in front of as they work to deliver content to their subscribers. So these numbers have sparked a lot of excitement and hype. And with Africa home to 6 of the world's fastest growing economies, Africa Rising has become the buzz phrase around this projected upward trajectory. This event right here, Africa 2050, is about separating the hype from the facts and getting the real stories from the tech insiders living it. So what's myth, what's fact, what's next? Let's begin to find out together tonight. And when you leave here, make sure to follow us on Facebook. We're at Africa in 2050 on Facebook, where you'll find video insights on everything from the symbiotic relationship between African digital media platforms and telecoms to the surprising advantage people with disabilities have in the tech space. So thank you again for coming. I appreciate it.
All right, so this is an event about Africa, right? So, Africa Style, we do call and response. So how are you all doing this evening? Wonderful. We are so happy to have you all here. My name is Erikan Obotetukudo. I do a number of things, but one thing that I think is particularly unique and exciting as it relates to this event in entrepreneurship is I host a podcast where I interview global entrepreneurs about the stories behind their names and the names of their companies. As globalization is expanding and many people are getting a presence at the table or creating their own tables, their names, their stories, their identities, and their journeys are worth capturing. And that is the nature of the podcast. It's called To Be Named, or TBN. But aside from that, we're not here to talk about that. We're here to get into some panels and discuss innovation, founders, technology, and the media's role in how we understand and experience advancements and exciting stories to tell in Africa and how media is challenging that. So first off, we'd love to begin a panel on founders and innovators. And I have two wonderful people to welcome to this. Please introduce yourselves and just give us a little bit about who you are, where you're from with your company, and just a little bit there, and then we can jump into those questions. Pardon me.
Thanks so much for having me. It's so nice to meet you and so nice to meet somebody new here today. My name is Danielle Kayembe. I'm originally from the Congo. Grew up here in the US, went to Stanford. Spent the early part of my career working in finance and strategy. Went back to Africa, actually worked in the Congo and did consulting for groups like Helios, Kingdom Zephyr, Vodacom, Congo. And then, kind of through seeing the rise of Africa and what was happening in terms of investment in digital, got really excited about starting to actually connect investors here in the US and even in places like London, and take the network that I built here in finance and other areas and bring it there. So that is a big part of what Tour of Tech does, as well as some of my other projects. And being a woman, being someone who's really passionate about using economics to positively impact the lives of women and children, we've incorporated a lot of partners that do things in social impact. So She Leads Africa, we love what they do. We love the women that they're working with, the entrepreneurs that they're supporting around Africa. We're working with Tastemakers Africa, which is an amazing group that's really changing the way that people see Africa and interact with it. And then Generation Enterprise, which is essentially a mini accelerator working in with youth with limited opportunities, and essentially kind of teaching them tech skills and helping them hack and improve their livelihoods and make more money. So for me, Tour of Tech is just one of those projects that hits a lot of areas that I'm excited about.
Wow. I'm Chika, Umeadi, originally from Nigeria. My company, Tiphub, focuses on supporting African diaspora startups by providing advisory, connections to investments and other mentorship, and any type of support that most startup company would need in their early stages. We host an annual event called Diaspora Demo Day in Washington, D.C., where we bring, I like to say, it's the largest gathering of diaspora companies outside of Africa, or African companies outside of Africa, together with, we bring companies, investors, and entrepreneurial people together to celebrate African entrepreneurship. In terms of my background, I have a product management background. Worked at a venture capital firm in DC, investing in analytics, and marketing analytics startups. From there, I moved into product management in those, some of the portfolio companies, and decided that I would take some of the things that I've learned in the venture capital space and also in product management to evaluate and support companies that were looking to build in places like Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, South Africa, places like that. So that's what we're doing now. Shameless plug, there's an event coming up November 21st, Diaspora Demo Day 2. We'll be pushing out stuff more, but keep that on your radar. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. So that considered, tell us a little bit about maybe three things that have made your experience working as an African entrepreneur on the ground and also out here different and similar to maybe some of the experiences we might be more acquainted with in Silicon Valley and Silicon Valley. So how is your experience different or similar being an entrepreneur and getting your companies off the ground, being that you are who you are and where you're working in demographics?
So in the interest of keeping it real, it's difficult, and it's difficult as a woman. So I can't lie. All the women here know that. Yep. It's difficult, and being a woman and being in an environment that is very male-dominated, that's not used to seeing women in certain ways, it's, you have to really hold your own when you're negotiating, when you're trying to get things done. So it's one of those things that you kind of learn, it's a little different to navigate than being here in the US and working. So I think for me, that's kind of first and foremost. I think the second thing is so important to manage expectations, because what you're really trading on is your reputation and your connections, both in the US and in Africa. So you're really the person on the line if the US company doesn't do what they said they would do, or the opposite happens, right? So one of the things that I learned early on, doing work in the Congo, which, as I'm sure you guys can imagine, compared to other countries, having worked on Wall Street, I did leverage finance at Bank of America and HSBC. You might move, 200 pieces of paper in a day, printing things, putting together reports, process. There's all of this process. In Africa, your average, business or government person might move one piece of paper in a month. So for you to get something done, you have to bring together these two processes that don't understand each other and manage those expectations. So for me, that is really one of the key learnings is, to understand your position, but to really be realistic about who the parties are that you're bringing together so you can be effective.
I have 3 points I'm trying to think of. So I think the most important thing that differs between operating in, I'm gonna stick to Nigeria and Ghana because that's where I work the most. I'm not gonna try to speak for all of Africa, but a place like Nigeria, for example, one of the key challenges that I see is the perception of trust, or what the concept of trust in the Nigerian ecosystem is different from the perception of trust in like a Silicon Valley. I can go to Silicon Valley and I can have a conversation about my idea, I can talk to people, and over time that helps me refine and develop my idea into something that will be better for hopefully the investor or the consumer. But I get that by talking to people and experiencing things that, feedback that people may say. But if I were to do that in Nigeria, and this is also changing, I'm not saying that it's stagnant in terms of the way that it is, but in Nigeria, people don't want to talk about, a lot of times don't want to talk about their ideas because of fear of, replicating. Someone might steal your idea, do it faster, do it better. And people feel that by keeping it to themselves, it's better off. This, in a sense, it hinders the development of the ecosystem. And I think ultimately leads to half-baked ideas sometimes. 2 is the specialization, right? I think in Silicon Alley, you see an accelerator that's focused on drone technology, and then you see investors that particularly invest in drone startups, and you see groups that support drone companies. We don't have that specialization yet. We're getting there, but we don't have those specializations in like a Nigeria or Ghana. And that hinders a lot of really interesting ideas and really interesting opportunities, because you have entrepreneurs that could develop those solutions, but they don't have the support they need because they're thinking way too advanced of what most traditional investors would be interested in. And then lastly, the perception of risk. And risk kind of is the cherry on top of everything that creates the challenge. In Nigeria, for example, if I were to go into a room and have a conversation with a couple of investors, it may be a little bit challenging because one, I'm a little bit younger than my counterparts, and two, two doesn't even matter. One is I'm too young, and so I'm inexperienced. So that automatically says I'm inexperienced. I haven't seen the world, and I don't know what I'm talking about, right? But let's take me and put me in a room in Silicon Valley. I go to an investor meeting in Silicon Valley, and I have a conversation with a bunch of investors, and they look at me as, you know, wow, he really has domain expertise in what he's talking about. I'm not even going to get into like if there's a racial undertone in that conversation,
But it's almost a benefit to be young,
exactly.
Valley,
Yeah.
as opposed to older.
Exactly. Like the age is a plus, where in Nigeria it may be your downfall. So I think those three things in general.
But why is that, and how does it reveal itself? As for people who may be traveling and want to engage, whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur, how does that present an interesting challenge or potentially an advantage?
So for me, what I normally do is I have front men that I will bring with me when I go to have conversations with higher up individuals in in Lagos. Because ultimately, just by having somebody that's a little bit older and talking, it makes the idea a little bit more valuable. So that's something that I've done.
Yeah, so when we're talking about age here, we're also talking about culture here. I want to pinpoint what we're talking about for people who can't assume that we're talking about.
I mean, it's age and culture, right?
Okay, but the sort of value and respect is intertwined with how people view and identify with their culture. And in many cultures, as a younger person, you don't start the conversation. You don't always interject or input yourself into certain spaces. So that's the basis of the challenge you're talking about. And so being a businessman, someone who's trying to do great things, as many people are, that creates a challenge with folks who don't have that same sort of openness.
Yeah.
Okay.
If I can just add to the point I made earlier, one of the best pieces of advice that I got from someone who's a friend and a mentor, I'm not going to say her name, she's very, very powerful, very well known. One of the best pieces of advice I got from her last summer was to make contracts with men, but to partner with women. And it changed so much. So I think as a woman, it's like, it can be difficult to kind of walk these lines of politeness versus business. And when you're acting with men who are at different levels of power and interest, it's difficult to know if they're interested in your business, your network, your idea. So that was one of the best pieces of advice I got, and just as a woman to kind of go in with the mentality of what's our agreement and what are the terms, and just going in knowing here's exactly what I'm looking for and here's what I want to get out of it, and it just helps to really not keep things open-ended when you're going into business. So that I feel like really protects women, and just to think about, I feel like typically if you meet an African woman and she kind of takes you under her wing, you know what you're getting into, but you don't necessarily always know on the other side. So partnerships with women, contracts with men.
Yes.
I might write that down. Will write that.
Which may not be an experience that's all too different from women all around the world. Which is awesome that you pinpoint that, but it's also important that we recognize that that's not exclusive to Across the Wires. And just really quickly, to just wrap up this panel a bit, and ideally this just stimulates a little bit so you all can talk further in depth thereafter. But so we obviously know Africa is set on this fast gold line path towards, or maybe not gold line, but we're trying to unpack the hype here, towards just development and excitement and technological expansion and all those things. That considered in the work that you guys have done on the ground and abroad, sort of how do you gauge that being on track? Essentially, how will this expansion benefit African entrepreneurs moving forward and thinking into that future of 2050?
So the way I think about it is falling into influenced by a few different factors. So I think ecosystems are really important. I think part of why Silicon Valley and even Silicon Alley have gotten where they are is because, one, you have the government really recognizing that that they need to support and provide an efficacy to business and to entrepreneurs to make certain aspects of doing business, whether it's legal or local or whatever, make that easier. So that's the first. I think the second is universities and education. So what is being provided in terms of support and skills that people are coming out of school with? And I think the third is really knowledge transfer. So when you have an ecosystem like Silicon Valley, and I feel like it's starting to happen so much here in New York as well, like there's groups of entrepreneurs that are getting together, like kind of like here, exchanging information, sharing what they learned, introducing people to investors and sharing knowledge. So I feel like what I see happening in Africa from the government perspective, especially in the last few years, is this recognition, this shift that, there's all this foreign direct investment coming in. There's tech as this huge opportunity because it's decoupled from these legacy systems that don't work, right? So oil, mining, all of these things that are broken in so many ways. So you're able to actually start with something that's fresh, that's new, that appeals to youth, which is this incredible untapped reserve of Africa. So I think governments are starting to realize that they can support this to create more opportunity for their countries going forward and to create new horizons. And I think that, universities will start to kind of train and help people get skills. I think in other countries, Dublin is starting to do this now. You see it happening in India, you see it happening in other places where people are starting to realize they can train people and give them the skills that they need in order to build this infrastructure of developers and coders, right? And that's why iHub is so amazing. If you guys have been to Nairobi and seen, and it's literally just teens sitting around on Saturdays learning to do Ruby on Rails. Like, that's incredible. And then I think this third part is the ecosystem of the actual entrepreneurs and founders. So what Jason is doing in Lagos with Spark is so important. Like starting to provide support to people who are starting. And I think a lot of what you're even doing with Tiphub, like that's needed. So that knowledge transfer and that sharing of information, I think those three ecosystems together are what's going to really position countries and the tech hubs for the future.
Africa is going to be the entrepreneur's paradise by 2050. I think the song that's playing in my head right now is "More Money, More Problems." There are so many. We've discussed, there are so many great opportunities, so many great things happening, but there are so many great problems that are going to come as a result.
Existing problems.
No, no, definitely. There are huge problems that are entrenched, but the multiplier of problems creates just a ton more opportunities for entrepreneurs to step in. We were talking earlier, a group of us were talking about diet, or the transition in dieting, or the diet that's, a lot of Western foods coming to Africa, and what does that do to the overall diet? Are pharmaceutical companies in the position to provide drugs for the new wave of illnesses that will occur? No, they're not. It's great that Western food, and that's also a sign of the rising middle class, and but with the rising middle class comes the rising middle class health problems. Education. The youth bulge. So the idea that we're going to continue to, by 2050, what is it, 20 or 30% of, what is the 40% of the, 40% of the world's population will be under 35. Is that it?
40% of the world's population will be African youth.
African youth. But how are we going to educate people at scale?
Yeah.
Right? So these are all, these are just two huge problems that, they're great opportunities, because if you can solve that, you're going to be eating forever. Like, you're going to be a trillion. I'm serious. I think it's a great opportunity, but that's what I look at. I look at it as, it's great that everything's happening, but it's there are so many more problems on the way, and that's going to require a lot of ingenuity, a a lot of great like forward-thinking individuals to solve them.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much, Chika and Danielle. This will wrap our first panel. We're going to wait to do the Q&A at the end with all the panelists. And now we will close this panel and invite Nana back to the stage.
So, in putting this together, we talked to a few different sort of players in the tech space who couldn't be here physically, but they're on the continent. They had so much insight to share. One person in particular, you can go to our Facebook page and visit Africa in 2050 and see some of those videos. But one person that we wanted to share with you here is a woman called Farida Bedwei. Farida is the co-founder and chief technical officer of Logiciel Ghana Limited, an innovative technology and services company that delivers core banking, mobile banking, and cash management mobilization platforms in Ghana. Logiciel has successfully focused on building institutional structures, processes, systems, and services that provide holistic transformational development to microfinance institutions in Ghana through its cloud-based software platform solution, Gkudi, which Bedwei co-created. The company currently provides a wide range of mobile and cloud-based solutions for microfinance institutions in Ghana and has the capacity and intent to develop these further to cover a wider cross-geographical client base. Bedwei is also a novelist. In March 2010, she released her debut novel, Definition of a Miracle, about a precocious protagonist with cerebral palsy. Definition of a Miracle is inspired by Bedwei's own story. As a baby, she was diagnosed with cerebral palsy and was homeschooled. Throughout her youth, she showed interest in computers, and at 18, she began her career in tech with a job as a software developer at Soft Solutions in Ghana. In the succeeding decade, she moved up to senior software architect at Rancard Solutions, then head of IT at G-Life, a technology-centered microfinance institution offering banking services to the informal sector, and the first institution to successfully implement mobile banking in Ghana. In April 2011, she co-founded Logiciel. In October 2012, the government of Ghana honored Bedwei with the National Youth Achievers Award. In October 2013, CEO magazine named her Africa's most influential woman in business and government. We spoke with Bedwei in July. We videotaped that conversation, and she graciously shared her insights on how Ghana's tech industry has evolved and what she believes is the next big opportunity vertical. I'm going to hit the lights, and you can...
I was the only female developer in the whole company. Apart from me, there was only another female who was the administrator. The internet hadn't really come to Ghana then, so this question of mobile applications and internet-based systems wasn't even in the sphere at all, so to speak, because there were very few institutions who could even afford internet. Because back then we were using dial-up, which was really slow, and we were paying like $100 a month for dial-up, and it was very expensive and very inefficient back then. So it changed because suddenly access to internet became cheaper and more and easily accessible because suddenly we could get internet on our phones. But with Rancard, what they started was an SMS-based platform where you could subscribe to news items and all those things. So you could send something to a short code and get a response from a short code, and that revolutionized the whole mobile industry in Ghana. And the market wasn't ready for them, so they went through a lot of problems convincing the telcos to adopt their system. They had managed to sign on to Go Ghana onto their SMS-based platform, and suddenly there was a lot of traffic coming in. So then we realized that okay, this may just work after all. So suddenly it just opened the floodgate for all these mobile content providers to start building mobile apps and all that on the platform. right now, most governments in Africa are trying to do away with cash and introduce the cashless system. So I think that is going to be the trend for the next 3 or 4 years. Because in the first place, it's going to take time and you're going to take a lot of energy and as well as education because you are going. Right, I mean, you are going to have to eradicate people's conception of having to use cash for everything. To telling them that now they cannot use coins and paper. I mean, how are you going to tell a woman in a remote area that right now when she goes to the market she should use her mobile phone? So that is going to take time. It's going to take a lot of education, and I don't think we'll get it fully implemented until the next, at least a minimum of 5 years in Ghana. I don't know about the rest of Africa, but if it becomes a policy, a government policy, I'm sure it will be done much faster than that. But I don't know where they are going with that. But I can envisage that thing taking up a lot of time.
You all can hear me, right? Great. So we'd love to invite our second panelist up to the stage. We are now going to be discussing a little bit more about media's role in thinking about Africa today and in 2050. So I'd love to have Anie from Innovative and IBOM LLC, and Rita Kusi from Kusi Consulting, and 360G.
Okay, well, it's nice to meet you. I'm really excited to be here. Actually, I want to thank Erikan and of course Ekua just for putting on this event. I strongly feel that it's important for us, living abroad, and also those who are on the African continent to be able to connect somehow. So my name is Rita Kusi. 2 years ago, I ended my ties with corporate America. It's a long story. I will not get into it. And I just decided to move back to Ghana. I was born in Ghana, grew up till the age of 9, and I just had this feeling, that it was time to go back. So I knew exactly the day I ended my ties with corporate America. I actually went home, I put my business plan together. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So I decided to start a consulting company, and we provide marketing services. We also do some training. We do recruitment as well, so kind of have our hand in everything. We recruited for companies like Coca-Cola in Ghana. We've done training at Ashesi University. I'm sure people are familiar with Ashesi. I'm not going to sit up here and tell you that I've made it and I'm living this glamorous lifestyle. Every day is definitely a struggle being back on the continent. Just like Danielle said, being a female in Africa and trying to also run a business, be an entrepreneur is very challenging. So that's a little bit about me.
Thank you for having me. My name is Anie. I am also in the corporate world, and for me, you get to a point within the corporate world where you feel like you have to give back to the community that actually raised you. So, little over 3 years ago, I decided to launch technology-based events for entrepreneurs. And for me, that allowed me the opportunity to work with entrepreneurs that were interested in actually having businesses that brought them back to Africa versus just being here. So when we have those events, we focus in on actually bringing people that could give them the wealth of knowledge just to get started and the information that they needed to say, hey, I could just do this even though I'm not at this scale. So that's what we did 3 years ago. And a little over a year and a half ago, we launched Innovative, which is a technology platform. And for us, we talk about what's happening within the African diaspora as well as what's happening in Africa, UK, and Caribbean islands. So for us, what we try to do is get the information so that people can see, hey, it's not just this idea of what you're seeing, this is actually what's going on.
Awesome. So I think most of us are familiar with some of the very typical and long-standing representations of life on the continent, across the continent. And there's a lot of new great things and potential challenging things that can be expressed and shared that not everyone gets to see. How are your various outlets challenging and moving forward notions and of technology, notions of life on the continent that we maybe are not frequently made aware of?
Okay, well, for me, I mean, since before I left to move to Ghana, I was heavily involved in the Pan-African community. And one of the things that I think in the Pan-African community, our mission is to tell our own stories, using media, using whatever outlet is available to us. So when I moved to Ghana, I realized that there was a lot of attention, a lot of focus on the entertainment industry. There are a lot of websites that tells the story of what the artists are doing, and there's this concert. But then it was hard for me to find a website that told our story. If I wanted to go to a relevant networking events, I worried where I get that information. So we decided to start a website, which it's actually becoming kind of a movement called 360GH. So 360GH is a platform that we want to give the youth a voice, to really tell their own story. It's just the everyday person, the average person who's making an impact in their own community, to give them a voice, to create an outlet for them to share their story with the global community. So part of what we do is we go around and we actually interview some of these innovators. We have them share their stories with us, tell us how they are impacting their communities. And we have a YouTube channel, we're also on social media. So for us, the youth of Africa, I think you asked me this question of who were some of the movers, who is actually changing Africa, and I honestly have to say that it's the youth. So my role, the role that I feel I have to play is create some kind of an outlet for them to be able to tell their stories and also just share, what it is that they're doing to impact the continent.
Right. Well, our stories are somewhat similar, but mine is more on, what was happening here and then grasping over there to tell the story. But what I've noticed recently within the space of technology is that all of the new blogs, such as Bedwei, I don't know if you guys have heard of some of those technology websites, but they're pretty much less than 4 or 5 years old. And a lot of them started out because the Bella Nigers was covering entertainment scene, and they didn't really focus on what was happening in technology. So it was pretty impressive for them to see that they were there in Africa, and they were going to see the innovators, and they were actually telling these stories and letting people know, hey, did you see this new innovation that was created? Did you see this new startup that just launched? Or did you see this new accelerator that just came in? So it was pretty impressive to see that they were covering that, and as they covered it, of course, people within Africa could see it, and it built it up pretty rapidly because there was a genuine interest to see what was happening in the tech space. So with that, it was easier for someone like myself to say, okay, that's great, but then it still doesn't reach this audience because they're not really looking for it. So let me bring that information to a touch point so that people can actually look and say, okay, wow, I didn't know that was going on. So by connecting just here and with over there, we're able to tell the stories that actually lets you see what kind of innovation, what's the latest innovation that's going on, or what new center has actually built up within Africa. And to me, that's pretty impressive because not only are we telling the stories, but we're also dictating who else is telling the story. TechCrunch picks up our stories. You have, the Next Web picks up their stories. So we're actually the ones that are gearing it as it relates to technology, what information is being seen versus the other information you may see that may be a negative impact for Africa.
I just want to say one thing. When I moved to Ghana, I had a bit of I never considered myself a techie, as they say, I graduated with a bachelor's in marketing, I have experience in HR, but then I realized that in Ghana, the way that I work with technology. I mean, I have a MacBook, I have my iPad, I have like 3 phones, so I looked down and I said, oh my God, I'm a techie, just admit it to yourself. Seriously, but I had a bit of an issue because I felt like there was a big hype with the tech industry. There was a lot of focus, and I didn't understand it because when you go outside, I live in Ghana, so I can tell you what I experienced in Accra, where I currently live. So when you go outside of Accra, most people don't use technology, so I felt like maybe there's a focus on the wrong sector, but then I recently realized, again, it goes back to the youth of Africa. What they're doing is they're creating their own businesses. They're creating these outlets using technology that also tells the stories of the average farmer who is located, you know, in a town that's like 10 hours away. We have companies like Farmerline, Alicia's Atta, where what he does is he's created a network for farmers, you know, where he's dispersing information to farmers in different rural areas. You know, you have companies like Asoraba, where he's actually creating administrative support for your local churches in various areas. You know, so I think the youth in Africa, they are definitely using technology and they're channeling it in such a way that it benefits even the local person who doesn't have access to technology, you know, but they're able to provide them with some kind of support. So, I mean, definitely tech is leading the way, and once you understand it, you know.
Right, so I think I've talked to a number of African entrepreneurs and people who've engaged with the continent over the past few years, and one of the common statements that people will say is, there are Zuckerbergs in Africa, there are the jobs in Africa, there are the Googles and the Apples, whether they're already existing or they're just ready, whether they're ready for funding or they're there, they just don't have the visibility or certain things. How are your guys' media outlets really helping to bring that visibility to these folks, and how can potentially folks like ourselves get engaged from across the waters in these great opportunities, and there's so much that there is to show to the rest of the world?
Well, I think for me, the issue is with comparison. You know, we shouldn't compare ourselves to the next Bill Gates or the next Mark Zuckerberg. Again, we have a lot of challenges on that continent. Just because we're using tech to, you know, to gain exposure and also to bring awareness to some of these businesses who are, I guess, leading the way, as you want to call it. I feel like we still have a lot of challenges. We have network issues, we have connectivity issues. I mean, so there are days where getting my internet to connect, thank God for Surfline, which is like Ghana's 4G internet. You know, everyone's like crazy about it. But we shouldn't compare ourselves because our challenges are different. You know, I think we should look at how can we benefit the continent as a whole? How can we benefit those who live in the rural areas? How can we support that? So I mean, of course, people like Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates, and you know, they have paved the way and they brought a lot of attention to tech, and the youth in Africa definitely look up to that. They look up to Silicon Valley, you know, but we have to do things a little differently, and for me, that's always been the concern. Africa is rising, Africa is growing, but are we growing in the right direction? You know, it's very important that we grow in the right direction.
Well, for me, I'm just going to give you some of the stories that I've seen that I was really impressed with. One of the stories that I saw that I was like, wow, was it was the app that we did a story on. And the story headline was "No More Pricks for Malaria." For those of you that don't know, usually you actually prick your hand so that they can test your blood to see if you have malaria. Well, a group of young innovators, because they're all pretty young right now, so a group of young innovators actually created an app that lets you scan your hand, and it gives you analytics based on that scan to let you know if you have malaria or not. And what it does is it takes that data, sends it to a doctor. Exactly, that's what we're really talking about. So in any case, it takes that information and it sends it to a doctor, and of course you get your information back. So for me, I was really impressed with that, because I was like, wow, can you imagine, you know, there's parts of Africa that, you know, you get in and you don't have access to a lot of things, but you're able to send this information out without the doctor being there. Another thing is, there was another young gentleman that I was really impressed with, and it was an app that allows doctors to communicate. I mean, you're here, I'm a doctor, I'm giving a speech, and the doctor is communicating with someone out in the desert, you know, and with that information they were able to read lab results and get that information back. So to be able to see that, and for people to send us that information and say, hey, this is what we're doing here, and I want you to share that information with your platform within USA. You know, and also like stories like watching new apps that come out, seeing how Africa is thinking about health and fitness, just like we do when we're talking about we gotta get to the gym. You know, they're actually creating these apps that allows you to find events. but they're also allowing us to know, hey, these things exist. You know, don't think that you're just gonna come there and, you know, only see like little basic things. We're actually creating things that allows you to see that there's things within Africa that lets you know, hey, we do think this is the way we think, and the innovation that we're creating is based on our market. So when you're dealing with publications such as Innovative that focus in on the diaspora, people within Africa want to get those stories out. So stories like that is what keeps us going, that great motivation to say, wow, these things are very innovative. And I mean, I could talk about that all day, but I don't want to bore you.
We see the energy, we feel it. Thank you all again for sharing your perspective. And invite all the panelists back to the stage. We can do a brief Q&A and then allow for some brief mingling where we have some Ginjan juice, juice from lovely gentleman based out of Guinea. But everyone else, please come on up stage, onto the stage, and we can do a quick Q&A.
Okay, we're sitting in the wrong, so it's Rita that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
You mentioned something about Africa growing in the right direction. And that resonated with me because I am always curious about the trajectory that we're taking in terms of focusing on tech and developing tech when we have so many basic problems like electricity and water and just basic infrastructure problems. I mean, getting things, goods and services from point A to point B is a problem in Africa. So are we correct in focusing on tech and skipping some of the basics, or is there a way that tech can address some of these basic problems that exist for a very long time?
Because of technology, you're going to get robotics. Robotics looks to address the basic needs within Africa, such as healthcare, that you're talking about, the basic needs. You know, when you're looking at robotics and being able to use robots to actually take things to areas that we couldn't normally go into, that's addressed with a basic need because we can't get there for whatever reason. So therefore, it gets addressed that way. You are also have to look at the fact that with technology, you also have to bring in the infrastructure. You know, a lot of the companies that are investing in Africa have to bring in these infrastructures in order for you to be able to create whatever it is you're creating. So no matter what app I create, if I don't have the infrastructure or the internet connection to make it work, it does not matter what I create. So it doesn't mean anything. So even though we're speaking technology and we're saying technology is the wave of the future for Africa, but also keep in mind that with technology is all these billions of dollars that's coming into Africa that will have to create these other things that can't be ignored. So yes, you're seeing those stories, but don't forget, because of it, you're actually going to have better innovation that allows for the basic needs to be met. So it's not being dismissed. And a lot of the stories that you may see, it's like, wow, that's so great, that innovation is fantastic. But then there's a whole bunch of healthcare things that are being created within the apps that you may not have seen that story. So those things are being addressed. And they may not be as publicly viewed based on whichever platform you're choosing to view it from. But because of technology, you're actually hitting on some of those points.
Well, I just wanted to say, I mean, I definitely agree with what's been said so far. You know, I honestly, my view on Africa at this moment is that Africa is for sale, you know, and Africa is for sale to the highest bidder. I feel that we are forgetting about the low-income residents and also the middle-income residents, and we're doing any and everything that caters. Maybe I shouldn't say Africa, maybe I should just say Ghana, because that's what I know. There are all these buildings going up, for instance. I mean, you literally blink and there's a new hotel. And I'm thinking to myself, who's going to live in this hotel? You know, not the average person that's earning cedis, you know. And then a lot of people now, what they do is when they rent to you, you have to pay dollars. And I'm like, I make cities. How do you want me to pay dollars? You know, so I think in terms of channeling our energy the right way, you know, there's a lot of focus on technology, and I feel that technology is supposed to be used to support other sectors, other industries. You know, technology is not supposed to stand on its own. You know, and again, the youth of Africa, they have figured this out and they are working tirelessly using technology, but you know, just like Anie mentioned, they need that support. They need financial support. I mean, they need whatever kind of support you can think of. You know, we need infrastructure. And I feel that
there are people there who are bringing attention to the field. You know, we just can't make it all about technology. We have to also involve other sectors as well.
Just really quickly, a good use case for this is financial inclusion. Like we, in the early 2000s, we had, Africa's always had a financial inclusion problem, bringing informal into the formal. That's been a huge problem, but you know, the foundation of mobile wallets is the mobile phone, the mobile platform things. As a result of having the mobile phone, in places like Kenya, you've increased accessibility to financial institutions, and you've made a lot of informal transactions now formal. I believe that we're going to, it's not the M-Pesa model, but we're going to see that same type of model start to happen in other areas where infrastructure is lacked. In places like, we'll see it with transportation. I know it's kind of crazy to think about, but you know, people are building roads right now. What's to say in 60 or 70 years that we'll need roads?
The e-commerce business within Africa 2 years ago was at approximately $8 billion. In the next 3 years, it's projected to be at $50 billion. I'm going to repeat it again, $50 billion. E-commerce business is basically a digital business. Someone has to create what's behind that digital business. So you're going to see a lot of job creations behind some of that e-commerce business that you're seeing. So it's not, I still feel that because of technology, to an aspect of it, it's going to bring other things that's going to help develop it. Africa's middle class is growing, which was non-existent years ago. But you're able to see it because a lot of these technologies is allowing that opportunity to happen. It doesn't eliminate, you know, the issues that we have. It's not the elimination of the issues, but at least it allows those issues to be solved through technology, because a lot of the disruptive technology is always in finding solutions for things that are just the natural causes that may happen. So it allows the funding to come in.
And my question to you is, you know, for people here who are interested in learning how to participate, could you tell folks kind of the easiest way for them to support whatever you see on the ground or any initiatives you're doing, and just without having to, you know, fly over?
Well, there's more. Okay, well, there's multitudes of platforms that you can start. Kwame, you know, you have a platform too, so you could have shared your platform while you're standing up. But one of the key components right now, it was mentioned earlier, VC for Africa. VC for Africa in 2013 had 12 million investors that invested. In 2014, that number doubled to 24 million of investors. And those investors, of course, are global. They could be anywhere in the world. It's a website. It allows you to see all the entrepreneurs that, well, the ones that have registered for VC for Africa. It allows you to go onto their platform and see some of the innovation and decide if you want to invest in it. So if you're not able to be there, that's an excellent platform. That's one of the platforms that we partner with. The other platform that is, it's not really one where you could take a look at, but they do have an event. We're media partners with them. It's Demo Africa. Demo Africa always typically has 30 to 40 different startups. You can go into their website, you see all the latest trends and what's happening within Africa. Another organization that you can follow is She Leads Africa. She Leads Africa just launched a year ago, and right now this is their second year. They have over thousands of women that they submit applications into their platform. I would definitely recommend that you look into that.
Danielle, you have some good perspective on,
I actually want to mirror, you actually just promoted all the companies that I would actually call out. So VC for Africa, She Leads Africa, Demo Africa. I think the real gap in Africa is kind of that angel and seed. That's really where you have the gap. There's money when people gain traction and get users and get it to a later stage. You know, there's a lot of people, I'll literally show deals to them. I know so many people, so I'll send, a bunch of deals to someone and they're like, oh my God, these all sound amazing. Do you have anything like the $20 million range? And I'm like, these are brilliant ideas. So I think that for them to get to those later stage investors, like if you can literally get together with your friends or other people that you know, just either support some of the groups that she mentioned or even form your own. But in that 10,000, 25,000, 50,000, like that seed and angel stage, that money goes so much further. In Lagos and Ghana, like it goes so far, and that's really where people need the capital. So that's what I'd encourage.
Precisely what Tour of Tech is doing this September to bring angel investors to Nairobi, Kenya, and Lagos, Nigeria, so that they can see on the ground what opportunities are happening on the ground.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, I'm trying to play you, you know.
Exactly. So Tour of Tech. So the first one is going to be this September. It's the last week in September, and we have a group of investors. So we have amazing people. We have managing directors from Techstars. We have 500 startups. We have support from Singularity University. We actually have Ekua, who's agreed to come and talk about his Ekua Lighting Africa initiative. I don't know how many of you guys know about that, but it's just amazing. Everybody knows, yeah. So his new solar power initiative, and as an African, I've seen him actually do quite a few entrepreneurial ventures in Congo and in other places that never really get the promotion. But this one, he's really gone up. So the tour is going to give investors, 7 days to really come to Lagos, tour, CC Hub, tour and really see kind of like the Lagos Garage, see all the incubators, see all the accelerators, meet the founders, attend demo days, and actually get in and like mentor startups and really get to know them. And we have a number of prizes in this range that we're giving out in the $10,000 to $25,000 range that a lot of these groups have pledged as part of their attendance. So we're really, really excited, and of course, like She Leads Africa and Demo Africa and some of those winners are going to benefit. And we're also trying to do what we can to bring some of them, some of the winners of the groups here to Silicon Valley so that they can also be part of the incubators here and kind of see how those work. So just as part of that knowledge transfer that can benefit some of those entrepreneurs that are starting and launching.
Awesome, and I'm so sorry to cut you all off, but I want to give everybody an opportunity to exchange and share with one another. But before anyone moves, I want you all to know that there is something that can be on your palate this night that will really rock your world, and that is Ginjan juice from the Ginjan Brothers. So feel free to take a sample in the back and enjoy some awesome Ginjan juice. And I'll pass the mic over to Tiffany briefly to just close it out.
Right. No, I just want to thank everyone again for coming, and if you guys want to come to another event, please connect with Allie Murphy in the back over there for all of our Is Possible events. Thanks again for coming, guys.
Enorme, vamos a poner